This has been a recent focus of mine. I produced a course in how to hook the reader from the first sentence of your first chapter. Linked to that below. It's not expensive and it's not very long either. And very, very important, in fact, for an author to recognise not only how to do it, but to recognise how important it is to ensure that your reader engages with the story from the very beginning. So here is a question about that. What should the first sentence be like in a fiction book, in a work of fiction? The first sentence has a lot of responsibility. It has one overall purpose, one priority higher than all the others, and that is this: it must convince the reader to read the second sentence. A reader who has read one sentence may consent to read a second. A reader who has read two sentences will likely read the third and is willing to attempt the fourth. A reader who reads four sentences will be positively enthusiastic about reading the fifth, sixth, and seventh. However, if you can't keep the reader's enthusiasm simmering along, then the reader may still run out of patience or goodwill eventually. But the wellspring of all that, its source, is that first sentence. So the first sentence has to be your very best writing. This is why I frequently tell new writers that they have finished their first manuscript not when they write the words "the end," but when they go back to the beginning and completely rewrite their first chapter to ensure that it is the best chapter in the book. And to ensure that the first sentence is the best sentence, you should go back to it once you've rewritten the first chapter. The best first sentences fulfill a number of requirements all at once. They give the reader a sense of the type of story this is going to be. They give the reader a sense of how it is going to be narrated. They arouse the reader's curiosity. They demonstrate the author's competence, and preferably they demonstrate the author's skill or talent. They demonstrate the author's confidence, which reassures the reader. One of the best of these, one of my very favourites, is the first line of Cranford by Mrs. Gaskell. I'm going to read it out to you. In the first place, Cranford is in the possession of the Amazons. All the holders of houses above a certain rent are women. As I mentioned, I've recently released a short course on creating a story hook. And creating a story hook is a technique that feeds directly into what the first sentence needs to be able to do. And I repeat, this course is short, it's cheap, and that is because I want everyone to know how to do this stuff. So follow the link in the description, go to my website, sign up for my newsletter. That's your best chance of getting a coupon, or follow the link below, go straight to the course, follow the lessons, you'll see. Went out of shot for a moment there because I wanted to think about whether there was more I could say to really impress upon you how important it is to be focused on the job that your first chapter has to do outside of just beginning the story. Even a lot of experienced authors, when they get to their first chapter, what they're thinking about is, how do I kick all of this off? How do I start the action going? How do I establish my main character to the reader and show the reader what the main character's values are or their most important attributes? And when you're focused on all of those things, yeah, you will get your story started. The problem with focusing on all of those things too closely is that you forget that the first chapter is actually where you establish a relationship with your reader. And that's really what you've got to do. You need to think about your first chapter as your first meeting with someone that you're going to spend a lot of time with over, if they're a fast reader, the next few days, if they're a slow reader, the next few weeks. It's kind of like there's someone who's your responsibility. Like, I don't know, maybe a niece or a nephew who's come to stay with you for the summer months. Or maybe you have agreed to care for an elderly relative. Or maybe you could think of it as being like a blind date. A first chapter can often feel like that to a reader. Well, if you handle introducing yourself to new people well, that's a big advantage. If you don't, then it is something you need to concentrate on. I guess the advantage, if you don't handle introducing yourself and forming a relationship with a new person well, you do have the one advantage that they are actually not there in person. But you can think about your first chapter as writing a formal letter of introduction to someone that you're about to meet. You can think of writing your first chapter as like writing a cover letter to go with your resume before you send it to a potential employer. You can think about it, yes, as a love letter. Your first chapter is where you are beginning to form a relationship with a reader. And it's profoundly important not to lose sight of that.